The purpose of tonight's meeting is to present to you, the neighborhood, a development concept being considered by the owner of the development team of 51 to 59 Tiffin Street prior to a formal development application being submitted to the city for review. So this forum provides an opportunity for the development team to hear initial community feedback and incorporate it into their plans prior to making that full and formal submission of the development application to the City of Barrie. So please be aware that we are recording our meeting tonight. Oops, there we go. Yes, meeting expectations. So please be aware that we are recording the meeting for the public record, and this recording will be used for the purpose of garnering your input and to respond to inquiries and will be considered public information. Please be aware that as a registered attendee tonight, your mailing and your email address will be added to the mailing list so that you can receive further information about this application as it progresses. Now, should you have any questions regarding this collection, please contact the Development Services Department. I would also like to let everyone know tonight that there are staff behind the scenes managing our technology, and they're here to make sure that this meeting runs smoothly, to grant everyone who wants to speak an opportunity to speak and to assist with any questions in the chat. And please, of course, please bear with us if we do have any technical issues, or if for some reason you do get disconnected, please feel free to log back in again. And if you did have a question, we'll make sure that you are heard tonight. So the intent of tonight's meeting is to provide the members of the public with an opportunity to become familiar with the development application and the planning review process, and to also ask the applicant questions and provide feedback. So what to expect during tonight's virtual meeting. So a brief overview of the city's review process and timing, a presentation from the applicant's representative team describing the proposal, and an opportunity to ask questions either of the applicant or city staff and provide comments or identify concerns with the application. What not to expect is a city staff recommendation on the application or a detailed analysis or a debate on the merits of the proposal between city staff and the applicant. Again, this is the neighborhood meeting stage and there has been no formal application made yet. So next steps after tonight's meeting. So before we get to that presentation, I just wanted to quickly highlight those next steps in the formal application process. So this neighborhood meeting is established very early in the development process to ensure that local concerns are heard and incorporated or addressed through the city's review. After this meeting, we expect that the applicant will make a formal submission for this development project. Formal submissions undergo a full technical review and must address comments received from this neighborhood meeting, from the city's technical departments and external agencies, and of course, members of the public more broadly. In conjunction with this, a statutory public meeting will be held on the application at the planning committee. And at that public meeting, the applicants will present their formal application to council, answer questions, and provide an overview of the response to any issues or concerns identified during tonight's neighborhood meeting. So as part of that public meeting, members of the public also have that additional opportunity to provide verbal or written comments. Now, following that public meeting, staff will continue the technical review process and the applicants will make any necessary revisions to the development proposal. Once that review process has concluded, a staff recommendation report is brought forward to council for their consideration. And, excuse me. All comments received through this review process, including those received at the neighborhood meeting tonight and that future public meeting, are identified and addressed in that staff report. And that does form part of staff's recommendation on the subject application. Now, given the timing on things, we're not necessarily sure when a staff report would be brought forward, but generally speaking, staff reports are brought forward a couple months after formal submission to provide time for that review. So, with that being said, we are here focusing tonight on the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments proposed at 51 to 59 Tiffin Street. The applicant's planner is Mr. Kevin from Innovative Planning Solutions, and the proposal would look to redesignate the subject lands from medium density to high density, and the zoning bylaw amendment would rezone the subject lands from residential multiple dwelling second density to residential apartment dwelling second density with special provisions to accommodate a 30-story building with 285 dwelling units. I am now going to hand meeting control over to Kevin, who's going to introduce himself and his team, and then they're going to share their presentation on the proposed development.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you for that really detailed overview in terms of the purpose of this meeting. And I want to just underscore 2 points. Of course, this is not a statutory meeting under the Planning Act. It is a neighborhood meeting. And secondly, and there are certain, the reason I say that is there are certain rights and privileges associated with that. And as Tyler outlined, that part of the meeting will, or that part of the process will follow along after formal submission of the application. So in that sense, it's not a statutory meeting. And the second is point that I want to emphasize, and again, Tyler was careful to point this out, is that no decisions are going to be made as a result of at this meeting at this time. It really is a meeting for us to garner input and have a conversation, initiate a conversation regarding the application. So with that, I think I'm ready to do 2 things. First, though, I'm going to turn it back over to Ray. And it's customary, at least at most meetings I attend now, that there is an Indigenous land acknowledgement. And Ray, I'm going to ask you to deliver that if you don't mind.
For sure. We acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, which includes the Odawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. This land is part of the Williams Treaty territory, and we recognize that the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge of the First Nations who lived on and cared for this land for generations. We honor the Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future, whose histories, language, and cultures continue to shape our community. Let this acknowledgement be more than words. May it guide us in our ongoing efforts towards truth, reconciliation, and respectful relationships. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ray. And carrying on then and moving on, I want to make some introductions. And obviously, staff have already introduced themselves, and Tyler Butler is the planner who's managing this meeting this evening. I can't see all of the meeting attendees on my screen, but I'll shout out to Councillor Harris, Ward 8, if he's attending this meeting this evening. I also want to make mention of the 2 applicants, owners, Charlie Wilson and Peter Greco, who are attending the meeting. In terms of IPS, Innovative Planning Solutions, we're a planning company. We have offices in Barrie and in Vaughan, and we are bringing this application forward to the municipality and the public for consideration. My name is Kevin Bichard. I had my name truncated to Mr. Kevin, but I have a whole name, Kevin Bichard, and I'm a senior associate with IPS Planning. With me this evening is Kyle Galvin, and he's a senior planner with our firm as well. And Kyle's particular expertise is in dealing with urban design. So he'll come in to the presentation at the appropriate stage in terms of site plan and building, and perhaps as need be, we'll jump into the meeting and provide additional clarification as necessary as I go through in the mainstay. Ray, you already heard from Ray Buddha Borman. He's an intermediate planner with the firm, and he'll be taking over part of the presentation at all. So it's really a multi-faceted affair this evening. We expect the presentation will take about 20 minutes and plus questions. And in terms of that, we'd ask that you hold your questions to the end of the meeting. We'll stay as long as necessary to answer the questions that are brought forward, but we'd like to bring the meeting forward if you don't mind. I'm not sure that Ray, at the end of our presentation, we will have a contact slide that you can reach us. And Tyler, maybe you can jump back in if need be. I'm not sure if there's a name to indicate, if there's a requirement to indicate name and address as part of this presentation. So I'm ready to go ahead with the presentation to slide 2. And of course, this, as was mentioned a little bit earlier, this is an application. Whoops, just about ready, Ray. Sorry about that. It's an application for an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for the property at 51 to 59 Tiffin Street in the city of Barrie. And of course, this is a neighborhood meeting. And we're going to go, the purpose of this presentation is to go into detail in terms of provide a detailed overview and receive information respecting the application. If you don't mind, Ray, thank you now. I like to start off many of my presentations with a conceptual rendering of the property because it places an image in the minds of community or counselors or whomever I'm presenting to in terms of context, because these presentations are usually quite technical, and piecing it together in context is sometimes a little bit elusive. So what I've shown in the center portion of this drawing is a proposal for is an image of the proposed development showing a 6-story parking podium, and that's the broad base, if you will, of the tower. Thank you, Ray, for pointing that out. And 24 stories of residential apartment units. What you see ghosted on the right-hand side of the image is massing for buildings and development applications that have been approved or are under consideration. And we've tried to represent them in their most current context, but it'll give you a sense that this area is an area in transition, as you well know from the number and development applications that you've seen in this area already. Ray, I'm ready to move to the next slide, if you don't mind. So this is a slide that's giving you context in terms of the existing site. And the site is 2.7 hectares, or 2,700 and almost 70 square meters. It has frontage along 60 meters plus frontage along Tiffin Street, and geographically it's generally flat. It's currently occupied by 2 residential dwellings on the property, but is and perhaps I'll move on from that, I think. So just let me move on to that next slide, if you don't mind, slide 4. So this slide is providing some additional context in terms of existing and proposed uses in the property. The overarching reference, I guess, point for this site from a planning application is the GO station, and it's located on the right-hand side of the drawing, of course, marked GO. And the site is approximately 280 meters or 0.29 kilometers, 2.28 kilometers from the GO station. It's located within the Allendale MTSA, and that's a planning term for major transit station area. And major transportation areas are areas that are defined by the provincial planning statement of 2024, and they're identified as areas that are where proposed intensification or land use intensification is intended. And the reason for that intensification, of course, in this instance, is the GO station providing rail transit and rail transit to the balance of the greater Toronto area. And the reason for intensification from a public policy point of view is that the province is investing in infrastructure. And what they're trying to do, and what the policy is intending to do, is create greater efficiencies in terms of land use concentration or intensity around these investments, provincial policy investments. So that's the sort of upshot of that policy configuration. The second thing I'd like to say is that you're seeing in a number of sites identified in green on the property, and those are approved developments in the area that have already been part of applications that are seeking to provide for intensification and residential use on lands within the MTSA area. Other notable designations are identifying commercial land use, parks and recreation areas, wastewater treatment facility, etc. Ray, I'm ready to move on to the next slide. This is a plan that obviously we have put together, but what we're trying to illustrate, and again, is the transition that's happening in this in the MTSA area, and we've identified blue and green areas. The green areas are developments that have occurred, or I'm sorry, that have been approved, and the blue are developments that are in pending approval. At least at the time that this schedule was approved. They may have since gone forward. And you can see that these lands south of the railway line have undergone the planning application, or are undergoing the planning application and approval process, to provide for a range of development densities and heights in that area. So over on the right-hand side of the image, we've attempted to show some of the building massing. And of course, these aren't architectural drawings, but it's identifying for you, I hope, the transition that is occurring in this area in terms of built form and development, and how it relates to the application that we're going forward. If you don't mind, perhaps we could go to the next slide. Here I'm beginning to sort of drill down into the applications, and I'm going to keep this at a fairly high level on this slide, and then move forward, if you will, or into more detail in subsequent slides. So the current official plan amendment is looking to increase the density from a medium density classification to a higher density classification. And I'll explain what that means. And similarly, and in a companion manner, the zoning bylaw amendment, we'll move it from residential multiple dwelling, first density RM, to apartment dwelling, second density, with special exemptions. And perhaps to give that zoning category some sense of understanding. In moving from medium to high density, we're looking at increasing the height up from a maximum permitted in the apartment density dwelling of 45 meters in terms of building height to a little over 92 meters in building height. So there's a substantial increase in density. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to provide additional explanation in terms of the policy context and the official plan. So perhaps, Ray, we could move on to the next slide. So policy in Ontario works like a funnel, if you will. It's in that sort of open-ended shape at the provincial level, where there's broad statements of policy. And the expectation is that as you move through local, well, I was going to say regional, but in this case, county official plans and local official plans, policies are refined and then implemented through zoning bylaws. So in this instance now, speaking to the City of Barrie circumstance, first in context, these lands are within the city's built up area. And what it means is that there's an understanding that these lands, of course, are going to be developed or utilized for urban purposes as opposed to non-urban use. So that's the most general statement that I think can be made. But more than that, the policies move toward generating an efficient use of lands and underutilized lands, particularly making more efficient use of resources such as sanitary, stormwater, and water servicing that's available. Because we're in an MTSA area, the province is prioritizing compact, walkable, transit-oriented development in this location. So it's recognizing that intensification will occur in MTSA areas. The development will provide much needed housing stock in a functional manner, and with sufficient variety in terms of providing affordable and attainable housing through different sizes of units and in this built form. So again, the proposed development is within an MTSA area. It provides the intention is efficiently provide housing options associated with high density development. So that's the provincial context. I'm going to go now to more locally to the official plan, the City of Barrie official plan. Thank you. So this is the current City of Barrie official plan 2022. And you can see that on the left-hand side of this drawing, that the plan is showing that the site is medium density. And I'm going to talk about that, and we'll talk about it in the context of other land uses in the area. So the medium density designation is typically applied to, obviously built for urban areas, built areas, and strategic growth areas. It serves in this case as a transition between lower and higher density residential uses. On the right-hand side, I'm showing that our lands, again, in City of Barrie official plan drawing, I'm showing that our lands are within an MTSA area. And I've already talked about the priority for increased density within an MTSA area. But a couple of other things, you see them bright red lines adjacent to the site. That is an intensification corridor. So not only is it within an MTSA, it's recognizing that in this area we're going to be seeing increased traffic and traffic and the need for expansion and increased growth and development of the transit facilities in this area. So in this context, I want to point out a couple of things, and Ray, I'll ask you, I'll sort of test you out, if you will, with your pointing. If I'm looking at the high density lands that are south of the rail corridor, the CN rail corridor, you can see then, as I go north of the rail corridor to Tiffin Street, you can see that there's a medium density corridor on the south side. Then north of Tiffin, there is a medium density and a high density core area. And then to the north of that, there is a green space parkland, and also, so the role of the medium density designation is to provide for a transition between higher density and medium density as we move toward lower densities. In this scenario, is it reasonable? Really, the question is whether it's reasonable to convert these lands to a higher density given the purpose of the medium density category. And our submission is saying that we think it's reasonable and appropriate to do that in the context of the MTSA, and in the context that the lands that are adjacent to on the north side of Tiffin would continue to provide for that transition in built form, a lower density, and the lands to the north of those would not be impacted as low density residential uses because, in fact, there's no single family or low rise use in that context. So we think we're still upholding the intent of this designation in the official plan, in even bringing forward additional densities on this site. And we note to the north and the east, the high density area again is going to. I think you're pointing that out for me, Ray, if you don't mind. Is companion, I guess, to the densities that we're proposing in this area. So we think that this is although an official plan amendment is required, we think that it's reasonable and appropriate to make that request to the city. If we go to slide 9, then Ray. So slide 9 speaks to the current zoning, and it's reasonable and appropriate that the current zoning reflects the current official plan, and as we make an application for official plan amendment for higher densities, we'll similarly be making an application for increased density in terms of the zoning bylaw. And we'll speak to that a little bit later. But the current zoning bylaw for the City of Barrie 2009-141 designates the site as an RM2 zone. It provides for apartment style development and townhouses and duplexes similarly, but the density in this development is much lower than in the high density designation that we're seeking. It would provide for up to 53 units per hectare, and that would yield about a 4-story apartment building. So think of a fairly aggressive stacked or townhouse or a low-rise apartment building. Certainly, the apartment and townhouse development is going to provide a smaller scale than one that we're anticipating would provide for development at a smaller scale than the one that the proposal that we are bringing forward to the city for their consideration. And is in keeping with the current official plan. On the right-hand side, you may or may not be aware that the City of Barrie has a proposed zoning bylaw. And the zoning bylaw in that context is an urban transition zone. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this zone, except to say that it's similar to the RM2 dwelling first density RM2 zone in the sense that it's looking to manage the transition between higher and lower densities. So higher densities being to the south, and presumably lower densities in predominantly single family areas. But of course, as we've already said, north of Tiffin Street is also providing for higher density development and similar medium density development. I'm going to move on to the development concept then, and I'm going to invite Kyle Galvin maybe to step in and provide an overview of this concept and its intent.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Kevin. Hope everybody can hear me. I'll go through a description of the proposed built form. What we're looking at here is the site plan for the proposal. The building is a residential tower proposed at 30 stories, and that includes a 6-story podium. The tower is set back from the podium from both of the neighbors by quite a lot, 12.5 meters from either side. And it also includes a 3-meter step back from the front. So the tower is kind of pushed into the middle of the site away, as far much away from the street and the neighbors as possible. Altogether, it includes 285 residential units, and there are amenity spaces located on the ground floor and on the 7th story of the building. Altogether, there's approximately 1,230 square meters of common amenity space provided. The concept incorporates a really wide street dedication along the entire frontage of Tiffin Street. Tiffin Street is going to be widened through the official plan that Kevin spoke about earlier. So it is on our side of the street, at the very least, they're asking for 7 meters dedication. So we're incorporating that. The ground floor, and the ground floor is what you're looking at here, is includes the residential lobby. Its front door obviously faces Tiffin Street, as well as there are 2 amenity or work spaces that front onto Tiffin Street as well. Those spaces kind of are strategically located so that there's activity on the street and kind of eyes on the street. So it provides for some active street frontage. Vehicular access is located on the western portion, or sorry, eastern portion of the property, and it leads into a covered parking podium. So basically, the majority of the lower 6 levels, the podium levels of the building, are going to be covered parking podium. And in a second here, you'll see kind of how that is dealt with, but it is kind of cleverly disguised as are architecturally screened from the street. For parking in total, we've got 290 spaces. So that exceeds a 1-to-1 ratio of parking spaces per residential unit. So every unit will have at least one parking spot. The remainder of the ground floor is used for mostly building operations, some lockers and storage. But there is quite a lot of bicycle storage proposed along the southern edge of the building there. It should also be noted that garbage pickup is going to be completely internalized to the building, and won't be out on the street or anything like that. So with that, perhaps maybe I'll go to the next slide, Ray, please. So in this drawing here, well, 2 drawings, we have a section on the left and a elevation on the right. The section kind of illustrates the parking podium at the base, so you can see the very ground floor level where you would have your kind of active streetscape, and then the building operations stuff in behind it, and then the next 5 stories are parking to get that 1-to-1 ratio that everybody likes. And then we start our units kind of on the 7th floor. We do have amenity spaces on that floor as well, but the kind of main tower portion of the proposal starts on the 7th floor and extends up to the 30th. So on the right hand side, you can see the front elevation of the building. It has been designed by Architecture Unfolded, a firm local to Ontario, and it has been inspired by a beehive. The building features a distinctive hexagonal exoskeleton, and it's going to include a number of sustainable building practices. So incorporating like passive design strategies intended to reduce energy demand. There's also the potential for green roofs, as well as some terrace planting, and that's intended to improve comfort and biodiversity. The building will also be ready for smart building systems and involving energy codes. So really looking at kind of sustainable practices in this development. So I guess with that, maybe I'll pass it over to you, Ray, and you can maybe speak to some of the statistics.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Hopefully everyone can hear my mic perfectly fine. As Kevin mentioned, we are going through a zoning bylaw amendment, and with that zoning bylaw amendment, we'll be going through some site-specific provisions, and you can kindly see them on the screen in this chart here. The ones that we'll highlight that we'll be seeking some relief for are reduction in interior side yard setback, with and without garage. So these 2 cells right here. Moving forward, we have a reduction in rear yard setback as well, reduction in the percentage of landscape open space, increase percentage of lot coverage, maximum lot coverage, increased percentage of gross floor area, increased building height, as Kevin mentioned before as well, and a decreased parking ratio from 1.5 to 1. And moving forward, here are the required studies that the City of Barrie has outlined to us, and we will be undergoing a planning justification report, for affordable housing report, a shadow study, community sustainability report, wind study, functional servicing report, geotechnical report, hydrogeological study, noise and vibration impact analysis, stormwater management report, which includes a functional servicing report as well, traffic impact study, what a parking justification, plus environmental site assessment, phosphate budget, context plan, site plan, and tree preservation plan, along with some others that we'll be providing as well. So back to Kevin.
Good, and maybe it's time to bring it home with a summary. And so part of my presentation spoke to the alignment of the official plan amendment and subsequently zoning with provincial and municipal policies supporting intensification on the lands, and particularly in an MTSA area. It provides, of course, this intensification in proximity to supportive transit facilitating development, and also, of course, the GO station. We've addressed three concepts in my presentation. We've addressed the MTSA, and briefly we've addressed the position of affordability and attainability through unit type, and we've addressed the discussion of transition of building heights. That's our presentation. I'm going to ask Ray to advance the next slide, and we'll leave this slide up if you like. If you would like to get a hold of us and are looking for additional information, please reach out to us. I think, and I'm almost certain that, and Tyler, if you could confirm for me that upon submission, whether or not the submission materials are available through a web portal to residents who may have an interest. But if there are specific questions, we're quite happy to carry on this dialogue, not only following this meeting or on into the future as well, as we go through the review process. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for giving of your time and attention to this public, I almost created a faux pas, this neighborhood information meeting. And yes, Tal, we got to watch our words in our business. And we're open to receiving your questions. And probably the way it'll work is if there's a process issue, maybe I'll try and address it, or Ray, and on a design front, so we'll move it over to Kyle.